This week in economics on the 5th day of April 2014. Spring has sprung, and it also sprung the unemployment or redundancy figures put forth this week. Nonetheless, this is a numbers man here, and we'll have a couple of interesting, at least one. We'll look at a study of job changings during a recession, or in this case they call it Great Recession. We'll call it the Depression. Kind of interesting findings, but not that interesting. They call them counterintuitive. I call them intuitive. But we'll start here with the people. We'll start with the Congressional Budget Office. This is a major factor in terms of how economic activity is centered in the U.S. The other two, the government, and of course macroeconomists look at that as a determining factor. And we look also where the markets are, and the markets are a more visceral kind of indication of so-called investor confidence. Now, there has been much talk, and there's also a Justice Department, SEC investigation of the manipulation of the market. If we have time, we'll get into that. The evidence has not come out yet, as it will in the future, and the markets are very important and cannot be manipulated more than the normal quote-unquote risk is put there. Paul Ryan, he is a right-wing senator from the state of Wisconsin and chair of the Budget Committee. Now, he sent a request to the Congressional Budget Office, and I'll just read parts of it here. You asked to address the feasibility of having the Congressional Budget Office undertake an analysis that would be required by the amendment to H.R. 1870. It's called the Pro-Growth Budgeting Act of 2013 that are currently being considered. H.R. 1874 would require the CBC to prepare, to the extent practicable, a macroeconomic impact analysis of budgetary effects of major legislation, defined by a bill as legislation with expected budgetary effects greater than 1/4% of the current projected gross domestic product of the U.S. in any fiscal year for the period covered by the cost estimate prepared by the agency. That period generally extends for 10 years, which many of the opposed amendments to H.R. 1874 would broaden the type of potential effects that the CBC required to analyze. For a number of reasons, the CBC would not be able to perform the analysis envisioned by that set of amendments. We do not have the analytical capabilities or the level of staffing that would be needed to undertake a complete task that would be assigned to us. Nor would the usual timetable for considering legislation allow time that would be required to complete such analysis, even if we did not face those analytical and staffing constraints. In particular, the CBC does not have the data or models that would be required to prepare the type of analysis of various effects of proposed legislation that are contemplated in the set of amendments. In some cases, we are not aware of the extent of the data models that would be required to undertake such an analysis. Moreover, building the necessary analytic capabilities and applying it under the circumstances envisioned in the set of amendments would require significantly more staff than CBC currently has. Finally, we are concerned that the type of framework available to the time frame framework available to CBC prepares a cost analysis would be much too short to take the kind of analysis envisioned in the amendments. In recent years, CBC has prepared macroeconomic analysis for major legislation such as comprehensive immigration reform that was considered in the Senate in 2013. In addition, the agencies conducted microeconomic analysis for most of the budgets proposed by the President over the past decade. Even in those analyses, however, it took a considerable amount of time, and in contrast to the time limits that is generally available for House and Senate consideration, many pieces of legislation taken up during the course of a congressional session. Although the broad requirements specified in the set of proposed amendments would not be possible for CBC to meet, the agency might be able to address some of these issues in special analysis done in cases when the issues of particular concern and when sufficient time is available to perform an analysis. We'd be happy to discuss it with the Budget Committee and other members of the House of Representatives in other ways which could respond to the issues highlighted by the amendments. This is Douglas Ellendorf, Dr. Ellendorf. He's the director of CBC. So Paul Ryan is, as they say, out there in his pro-growth budget amendment act there, which is going nowhere politically at this point in time. We thought we'd bring that up as a precursor here, and we'll skip around a little bit here. We'll go to the BBC and get the jobs situation from literally abroad. And one note about jobs creation of roughly 192,000 jobs. The U.S. needs to actually create roughly 250,000 to 300,000 to, as one would say, clear away the proverbial brush. Now, this is from the BBC. The rate is it's still at 6.7. We've talked about this rate many times here, moving from 6.7 to around 6%. Now 6.5, 0.2% downward is what the Fed targets, but that is not a hard and tight number. Our thinking is it will take closer to 6% because of some of the underpinnings and some of the brush involved here. But this was the March figures. We're broadly in line with economists' projections of 200,000. One of the things about the 200,000 rate, it is projected it can be up and it can be down. But one of the things to note here, number of people unemployed at 10.5 million. But when we look at the number of people unemployed in terms of long-term unemployment, some of those figures have not changed very much. Let's get the breakdown here. In March, business services added 57,000 jobs, with 29,000 in the temporary stage. Computer systems added, design, etc., 6,000 jobs. Healthcare, 19,000 new jobs. Ambulatory healthcare, which includes outpatient care, rose by 20,000. Nursing homes, nursing care, lost 5,000 over the period. Mining and logging, that's an old, out-of-date definition. They need to clean that one up. 7,000 jobs against an average growth of 3,000 per month. On Friday, the jobs figure for February revised up from 75,000 to 197,000. You notice the round numbers here. January was also revised up from 29,000 to 44,000. So you'll see some revisions here and perhaps more. Let's just look at the actual thing. We'll just leave the BBC and go to the release. This is released on Friday, and we'll just use that. This is a household survey. We've talked about it before. In March, the number of unemployed persons is essentially unchanged at 10.5. We brought that in. And since December of 2013, over the year, the number of unemployed persons and unemployed rates were down 1.2 million, or 0.8 percentage points, respectively. Among the major worker groups, the unemployment rate for adult women increased to 6.2% in March, The rate for men decreased to 6.2%. The rate for teenagers, it's been hovering around this, incidentally, at 20.9. Whites were at 5.8. In other words, that rate is below the Fed target rate. For African Americans at 12.4%, Latinos much lower at 7.9%, showed very little change. You're not going to see very much change there. For Asians, and this includes a broad swipe of people from China, India, etc., 5.4%, not seasonal adjusted. The long-term unemployed, jobless for 27 weeks, at 3.7 million. That's a little changed in March. And these individuals account for 35.8% of the unemployed. So you can start looking at that. Long term was down by 837,000 over the year. Both the civilian labor force and the total employment increased in March. The labor force participation rate at 63.2. That's the one we look at very, very carefully. The employment population ratio at 58.9, and that's little changed over March. The number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons, sometimes referred to as involuntary part-time workers, was little changed at 7.4 million in March. These individuals are working part-time because their hours had been cut back, etc. In March, 2.2 million persons were marginally attached to the labor force. Of course, a little change there. The data is, of course, not seasonally adjusted. Among the marginally attached, there are 698,000 discouraged workers in March, down slightly from a year ago, because things are looking a little bit better and they sprung forward, so to speak. The remaining 1.5 million persons are marginally attached to the labor force in March had not searched for work, so they were really marginally attached, pardon the pun. The total non-farm employment rose again by the 192,000. Professional and business services added 56,000 jobs in March, in line with the average monthly gain of about 56,000. That has been over the last 12 months. Employment increased in the temporary health services, 29,000 there. In computer design, we talked about that. That was 6,000. In architecture and engineering services, 5,000. We gave the healthcare score there. And employment in mining, and this is some of the stuff we need to go, 7,000 in March. Increase occurred in support activity for mining, 5,000 there. Over the past 12 months, mining and logging, not a lot of logging there, 3,000 per month. You can see where that is. Construction continued to trend upwards at 19,000. You're going to have more of that if you drive around the U.S. from city to city. You see a lot of construction projects, and a lot of those are coming online, stadiums, etc. The past year, construction jobs have risen by 151,000. In government jobs, unchanged. A decline of 9,000 jobs in the federal government was mostly offset by an increase of 8,000 in local government, excluding education. Over the past year, employment in the federal government has fallen by, this is an amazing number here, 85,000. Employment in other major industries, including manufacturing, wholesale, etc., changed a little over the month. The average work week for employees in private non-farm increased by 0.2% in March to 34.5%, offsetting net declines over the prior 3 months. The manufacturing work week rose by 0.3 in March to 41.1 hour, and overtime at 1/10 of an hour rose 1/10 of an hour to 3.5 hours. In March, the average hourly earning for all workers in private non-farm edged down by a penny to $24.30. That's why it's very important to deal with the increase in the minimum. You can see the difference there. You're talking about under $10 as opposed to $24. Following increase of 9% in February, and over the average, let's see, the rise there was 49 cents or 2.1%. The change in total non-farm employment for January is revised up. We already mentioned that. So there was some revisions. We finally got to the report itself. So basically, we've looked at where Chairman Ryan is going with his little projections there, and the situation. Let's go to the Federal Reserve here, and we'll look at this study. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, where Dr. Janet Yellen worked at one time. Career changes decline during recessions. This is from Carlos Carrero Tudela and Lou Vasquez. Nonetheless, we'll stick away from them and continue on here. During the Great Recession, the unemployment rate began rising substantially to 10% in the aftermath of falling slowly to under 7%. The debate over the main cause of the main causes underlining this slow job market recovery has resulted in two very distant views. One view is that many of the jobs created during the boom in real estate, construction, finance was subsequently lost in the recession and will not come back in the economic recovery. As a consequence, much of the labor market recovery reflects workers changing careers. That is, workers previously in construction, real estate, finance-related industries, and in occupations where jobs were plentiful before the recession must change to jobs in other sectors and positions where job growth is currently concentrated. The second view is that rising unemployment results from a more broad-based shortfall in demand and economic activity that affect workers across a whole set of industries and occupations. Contrary to the first view, the labor market recovery need not be accomplished by an increase in workers changing careers. Instead, overall job creation will replenish the jobs lost during the downturn. In this economic letter, we shed more light on the two competing views. To do so, we analyze the rates at which unemployed and employed workers switch careers. We first measure the fraction of workers that changed jobs and were hired into different industries or occupations. Then we compare these rates of career change among both the unemployed and employed workers, fractional during the recession, recoveries, and booms. It's a very interesting survey here. We use a current population survey, the CPS, the monthly survey there for U.S. employment statistics to calculate the rate at which people change careers. Career changes include workers who change careers, such as an accountant moving from a job in a bank to one in a construction company, as well as a worker who changes occupation, such as an accountant and becomes a construction worker. We separate career changes in two types depending on the worker's employment status immediately before being hired. The first type is based upon hires out of unemployment, which consists of people who were unemployed in the month before being hired into a new job. We use the survey information about the worker's industry and occupation immediately before and after the unemployment spell to determine how many workers change careers out of unemployment. The second type is based upon job-to-job hires, which consist of people who report being employed in the month before being hired into a new job. Comparing these industries and occupations along two consecutive jobs allows us to determine whether a worker changing careers without an intervening spell of unemployment. Our second measurement begins in 1994 the year the CPC began collecting information. The level of data we use to distinguish the industries and occupation reflects on our measurement of career change. For example, at the broadest, most arrogant level, a worker who switches from being a travel agent to working as a cashier at a supermarket does not switch occupations because they are both sales and related occupation. However, a more detailed, disaggregated level, which we distinguish between a sales representative and a retail sales worker, this would be classified as an occupational switch, thus a career change. I would disagree with that because basically they're doing the same thing. And we won't get to what the figures say here because you don't have those. You can go to the survey. We'll put a link up on the deal. The more detailed our industry and occupational categories are, the more career changes we identify. This is why the line showing changes in industry and occupation groups at major levels below that show the most detailed levels in both panels. The common cyclical pattern between these series clearly shows that the fraction of unemployed people who change careers upon getting rehired declines during recessions, and all the recessions in our sample follow this pattern since the 80s. The Great Recession, we call it Depression, started in 2007. Likewise, figures show the career change increased when the labor market is strong and at the end of the 80s and the 90s. In other words, people don't change careers during recessions and depressions. The fact that the rate of career change for unemployed workers declines during recessions seems counterintuitive. We started out talking about it, and actually it is intuitive, but there are several possible explanations for the phenomena. These explanations can be divided into two broad categories. The first focuses on why unemployed during recessions are likely to pursue a change in career, and considering arrogant unemployment of fractionalizations based on unemployed workers' decision to change occupation. They argue that recessions, two factors reduce the incentive for unemployed people to change careers. This is really what we want to focus on. One, though their job opportunities in their old career might have dried up during the recession, it's also hard to find jobs in an alternative career that they consider pursuing. And two, workers take into account that they may be less likely to start a particular successful career during a recession. It is very difficult. There are exceptions to many rules. One of the major caveats concerning our measurement of career change, we did not observe whether the unemployed who do not get hired during the sample period end up making career changes. Well, including job-to-job hires. We combine the data from hires that come from unemployment and those that come directly from another job. Now, I've seen this particular thing happen, and there's an anecdotal conclusion that if you have a job, and it does work for many people, it is much easier for a worker to get another job. That's a situation where a lady I knew had 3 or 4 part-time jobs, and she could get additional employment, but it was a bit difficult to get full employment. Finally, she was able to get, through a temporary agency, a job that offered full hours, and she was vested in their system in a warehouse. And it was kind of interesting with her. We followed her through the summer months, where she had virtually no job offers, a few interviews, and that was very sparse. The one lady was depressed about it, and then all of a sudden in the fall, she landed one job, and was not a bad job. It didn't pay as much as her prior job, and after 1 week, she landed a different job at a different company through a temporary agency. It was a much better job, and she was faced with the proverbial 10 to 12 hour workday. And around the holidays, that slowed down. And of course, since she was not vested, she did not get holiday pay. But on January 1, she became a full employed worker of that entity. So that's kind of an interesting situation there. But did she change careers? No, she stayed basically with warehousing / buying. Nonetheless, back to the study. For this combined measurement of hires, the rate versus the level distinction turns out to be unimportant. During recessions, the decrease in the number of job-to-job hires is greater than the increase in hire out of the unemployed. That's effectively what we just said. The net results is a consequence, is a total number of hires decline in recessions. Consequently, both the rate at which new hires change careers and the number of new hires that change careers decline. Overall, the extent of career changes decline during recessions, including the big one. Conclusion. A prominent view in economic associates recessions with times when productive resources are reallocated to new and better use. The increase in unemployment during these downturns is often thought to reflect, at least in part, the reallocation. Intuitively, this view also implies that proportionally more workers, especially among the unemployed, would switch careers to find work in different industries and occupations during the recession. If this were the case, a larger proportion of hires during the recession should have been previously employed in different sectors of occupations. However, our data shows otherwise. The fractions of hires during the recession instead reflect a drop in the rates of career change. And part of this is the old resume interview process. If you're going to a new career, you perhaps could not show a background in that career. I know in information technology, they decided that for purposes of hiring people, that a programmer or analyst have 3 to 4 years. Well, what this did was blocked out people that recently matriculated from university, because they would not have that much time unless, even with an internship, they would have, say, just a few months and not 3 to 4 years. So that situation is, one fellow had to literally go to being a clerk at a 7-Eleven. And he was lucky enough of following him through one of the discussions operations to find a full-time job, but he had to go to the Dakotas to do it. So there are always situations like this. We roll on here. This study out of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, career changes declined during recessions. That was Carlos Carrero there to Della was the principal author of that. We leave him and roll on here. Let's see, where shall we go? We will go to we'll go to the BBC and deal with some of the other changes that have happened here. It's kind of interesting here. We'll get one from Bloomberg, where sanctions because of the Crimea is falling on artists like Miley Cyrus, a company that booked her in Helsinki in a concert hall owned by a sanctioned individual. They don't know if they can pay her the $5,000 or not. This gets to be just a very strange situation indeed. And then certain banks that are on the list are not able to process visas. Some others are. And the list goes on and on. So we'll continue to watch this, the machinations that are being caused across Europe. The German Chancellor Merkel says that basically a hardline situation, whereas in the Ukraine they're into austerity, and the Russian Federation has doubled their gas bill. They have rejected it and threatened legal action there, but I don't think the legal action would do them any good. Gazprom raised the rate by 81% to what is it? 485.5 there. from 228.50. These are the dollar thing. That's 1,000 cubic meters of gas. But they can very little they can do about that, and that will continue to be a story. And then the IMF has got in there, said last month it would raise the price of gas for consumers by 50%. So they're working on getting the $18 billion from the IMF. So they'll have to, as they say, work a little bit harder on that. Out of the UK here, we had that number, and hopefully we'll find again, where things were a bit more rosy in the UK. I guess we're not going to find what we were looking for here. We'll get High Street here. High Street showing great resilience. About 1 in 5 High Street shops affected by the collapse as they say, is still vacant. This is from Deloitte, the accountancy firm. The firm analyzed data from 27 major company administrations since that particular time, and using the data of a local data company, it traced to 5,900 shops. And Greater London has a vacancy rate of 18%, much more than you would find in a comparable situation in the U.S. Let's go to debt there. Debt and deficit. This is in we won't mess with that. We'll move around that particular article. We didn't get what we were actually wanting to get out of the UK. There was a different survey there. We'll get that later time. To China, much more important. Introduces measures to boost economic growth. We've talked a little about this. Said it's cutting taxes on small farms, speeding up construction of rail lines, which is always good. Infrastructure. The measure previously had been included in the economic plan for 2014. To finance the rail investment, the government will sell 150 billion yuan. That is $24.6 billion, 14.5 billion pounds of bonds. And the National People's Congress kept its annual growth target at 7.5%. Very good target for them to look at. No doubt about that. In China. Chile also, while we are here looking at... Oops. I hit China and I should have been hit Chile. Where's Chile? No, that's China. Oh, we had Chile. Oh, well. Sometimes. Japan. A Greenpeace story. We like to do this. To halt the whale meat sales after ruling, the e-commerce giant Rakuten said it was told its online retailers to stop selling whale meat. Well, that's good. The company said a decision following a ruling by the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So they won't be selling the whale meat, which is good, but they're still selling ivory online. What's a really dirty place there. We thought we'd have, look at our time here, thought we'd have some time. We'll go ahead and do the numbers to do a little report from market. We had originally brought that up thinking we would have time to do it, and it appears we have not. I don't know if we touched on the 2005, these are the economists, 2015, that the rates would be raised. We don't have a lot of time to do it, but 8 of the 18 primary dealers said they expect central banks to increase policy rate by the end of June next year. The rate was in the summer that they would start these, the spring. I think at the present pace, you'll probably see these rate increases sooner than later. I would go more for the spring than not the spring. A little difficult to project there. And for some reason, our market survey has slipped away from us. And that does happen, but none of us will go ahead and do the numbers. These were the markets on Friday, unless otherwise noted, and they're in positive term unless we use the term negative, not to confuse anyone here. The FTSE at 44.14, the DAC at 85.41. Wait a minute here. I'm sorry. At 66.95. In France, they were at 35.22. In Brussels, at 2.22. And in Madrid, at 93.10, all on Friday. In Zurich, they were in the negative range at 18.63. In Moscow, 19.98. In Johannesburg, 116.36. In Bombay, minus 149.57. In Karachi, 103.33. In Lahore, 52.72. In Colombo, 36.0 or not 8. In Tehran on Monday, 272.09. In Sydney, 12.90. The Nikkei was down on Friday, minus 8.11. And also the Hang Seng, negative 55. In Shanghai, 15.13. More red ink in New York. Here, 159.84. And the Nasdaq, 110.02. All in negative. The Merck was also in the negative, minus 23.68. And in Sao Paulo, they were also minus 26.43. And in Mexico, 35.28. Let's take a quick look at the commodities. Brent crude futures they were 44 cents at 106.59, and the spot was really up at 165, $1.65, and it was basically equal 106.87. And Texas Intermediate was up 76 cents at $101.07. T-Boone Pickens is doing somersaults all over the place. He remembers $15 a barrel. Oil, Dubai Gold, down $4. $130.10. In other words, $1,303.10. And oat futures were down $4. Soybean down $1.50. And wheat futures down 50 cents. So we're seeing these things go down as far as on the commodity market, which is good for all of us. Thus, this will do it for Numbers Man. For those in business, make next week a productive one. The consumer, keep your eyes on the ball. The job numbers are improving, and we can continue in the 200 to 250 jobs added per month. This thing will look much better. We'll be moving closer and beyond the mythical 6.5%, and you will start to see some changing of careers as people get more solid in. What has happened here during the quote-unquote Great Recession / Depression, many people went back to school. So you're going to see these people combine their recent training with a practical experience, such as showing up for work, etc. We don't want to get too trite with this, But those things will go in, and also you see jobs that were not available during the Depression that are now there, specifically in manufacturing, the new, quote-unquote, new manufacturing. We see this in information technology all the time, but various kinds of programming languages have come in, and also the overshadowing of a cloud. So now people are getting, quote-unquote, cloud certificates. And even if you go to the more rudimentary type things, as sales clerks are not what they used to be. It is much more automated. Some places have added them. And then the great Amazon and the e-marketers out there, they're adding jobs also, and more business is being done there. Good day.